Okay, so I've been seeing that some people are struggling with breaking down their images to make their stencils into different layers. So I'm just going to show you one more time with 3 different examples of how to break your image down for stencil making. All right, so I'm going to first show you my Adidas one again. So let's just look at this image right here. We've got the Adidas logo. It has all of these different shapes, right? The first stencil that we're making is going to be that very simple lotus flower shape. It's just the outline of the image, right? And then the second stencil will be all of these small details, which you'll need probably an X-Acto knife for. So here's the example of the stencil that I haven't finished cutting out yet, but you can see that this is stencil number 2, right? So this is layer number 2 with all of the fine details. I'm going to show you how to break down an image of a celebrity because I think that's one of the hardest ones to break down. So this is the first stencil layer on tracing paper that you would break your image down to have the outline. So let me take the image away. Do you see how that's the outline of Drake right there, right? The second layer, which is a little bit more tricky, is to get the fine detail of Drake's face so you can recognize that it's Drake, right? So the second layer is going to be his face broken down into shapes. I'm taking these thick lines that are here and creating little shapes to cut out for my stencil, okay? Here's an example on tracing paper of the first layer. So I'm going to do the outline of Obama, right? Okay, so I use my tracing paper and I just get the general shape of Obama onto the tracing paper. Okay, here he is. This is my layer 1. So when I go to put this layer onto my paper, I'm gonna line up where I want my stencil to be, right? On my paper cut out. And then I'll use scissors. Well, first I use the tracing paper to transfer my image over, and then I use scissors to cut that image out. Do you see how we're gonna have the first layer of whatever color we want on our print is gonna turn out to be this shape, this outside shape here, okay? So that's layer number 1. Pretty simple, it's just the outside shape of your image. Layer number 2, which is a little trickier, is of course the detail of Obama's face, okay? So I'm gonna make his eyes one shape, right? Maybe I'll do some little detail of these lines below his eyes. These are all shapes I'm making, right? So when I'm drawing on this image, I'm breaking it into shapes. If I'm just doing lines like here, if there's no shape that is enclosed that I cut out, you will not be able to create a stencil with that, okay? So my image has to have a shape, okay? Let's check out how I made this stencil for this one. All right, I turned his facial features, all those lines, into different shapes. Shape. There's a shape here that I'm gonna cut out. A shape here, right? A shape here. If you don't break it into shapes, and it's just lines, you're gonna cut out full big chunks of your piece and you won't have these fine detail lines, okay? So let's look at it one more time. I'm gonna use the tracing paper to do one more time to go over this. I'm gonna use the full new sheet of tracing paper, layer 2. This is for fine detail work, right? So his lips, I'm gonna have separated shapes. You can't have them touching. You have to have paper in between for them to work, right? So there's his lips. Here, look, a shape for the corners of his mouth, like this. If the lines go into each other, like on the nose here, we can't have them connected, right? So maybe for the nose, I'm gonna make this into one full shape so I don't have to do all the lines. Do you see how I turned this into a shape? I'm gonna color it in. So this is gonna be what's cut out of my paper to have a very nice fine detail nose shape, right? All right, here's the eyes. I'm probably gonna do one shape for the eyes, just one cutout. Here's the detail below the eye. Here's his eyebrow. It's just the whole cat, like the whole shape of the eyebrow. I'm not doing individual lines here, I'm just doing shapes. So in the end, when we transfer this onto our paper, you transfer, right, with your tracing paper, and then you start to cut it out, you have shape details of his face, okay? And then I'm just gonna show you one more time how to use an X-Acto knife, because for images like this, where you have that fine detail coming through, it's gonna be really hard to use scissors, almost impossible. So let's just use an X-Acto knife. You need a piece of paper underneath so that you're not cutting into the table. And then you need to get an X-Acto knife from me, right? We're gonna trade something for these X-Acto knives, all right? Just so I get them back at the end of class. And when you use an X-Acto knife, you always have your other hand outside of your cutting zone, and you pull and use the X-Acto knife like a pencil almost, and you just start to cut out those shapes, okay? Here's one. Last two, all right? If your shapes are really close together, you're probably gonna break your stencil because you need some paper in between your shapes as support. See how there's paper here? If my shape goes this close to this one, it's probably not gonna hold up during the painting process. Okay, so last shape I'm cutting out using the X-Acto knife, pulling away from me as I go, not having my fingers in the way, and now I have layer 2. Very fine detail, okay? So you can do this to the amount of detail that you want. If you want to just do different shapes for the face, that's okay. You don't have to get so in depth with getting the facial features recognized. You just need 2 stencil layers. So here is my first stencil layer, right? And it's gonna go around, and these match up together. Backwards here. These will match up with my paper and how I lined it up, so that the first time I print, there's gonna be an initial color like this, and then the second time is this extra layer added on here. Okay, I'm gonna go, in the next video that I show, I'm gonna show you how to use stencils to paint and do printmaking, but you need at least 2 layers to start off with for your images, okay?